Kia ora whānau, welcome to today's live chat. I'm Linda, I'm one of the clinical leaders from Plunket Line, and joining me today is Bernadette Heaphy, who is the project manager for immunisation and also a registered nurse. And we're here today to talk about the immunisation schedule for our tamariki and the importance of keeping up with it. So welcome, Bernadette.
Thank you, Linda. It's great to be here, and kia ora koutou, everyone. So as Linda said, I'm Bernadette Heaphy. I work for the Immunisation Advisory Centre, and it's great to have this opportunity to come and be here with you today. So thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. So, gosh, where do we start? I guess the hot topic at the moment is the new men's B immunisation that's out there now for our tamariki. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that, Bernadette? And, one of the difference with it is that we've noticed, that they're advising to use paracetamol with it, with our children, whereas with the other immunisations, they were saying not to use paracetamol. So do you want to just, talk to us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I think right off the bat to say I'm really excited to see the meningococcal B vaccine, Bexsero, shortened to MenB, being put on the schedule for New Zealand children. While meningococcal disease is rare, it is incredibly severe when you get invasive disease. So it's a really important opportunity for us to be able to protect our tamariki and give them the opportunity to grow up fit, well and healthy. You're right, Linda. It is slightly different in terms of some of the recommendations around the MenB vaccine, that we are recommending prophylaxis paracetamol. So that actually means offering a dose either just before or at the time of the vaccination event, and then repeating the dose at 4 to 6 hourly intervals twice. And that's because there is this risk of increased fever response, particularly with the MenB vaccine and when it's given with its other routine IMS. And it's just a way of trying to take the edges off of that. Fever's not necessarily a bad thing, and we've talked about this before, that it is part of the immune response. It says the body's responding to the vaccine. But we don't want children to have high fever. We don't want them to then end up visiting after hours clinics or the emergency department and having unnecessary procedures. So the recommendation is around having the paracetamol, and it doesn't, there's a bit of concern out there, and we hear it as well, that, will it affect how my baby responds to the vaccines? But no, it won't interfere. So they did the testing around making sure that people still responded appropriately to the vaccines and built up those little fighters, those antibodies. So it's just slightly different from what we're used to. So So they put the.
I was just going to ask you, at what ages are they getting this new men's B vaccine? I think you were going to say.
So it's been put on the schedule, and this can be a little confusing. So it's on at the 3-month and the 5-month event, with then a booster at 12 months. But there is an alternative schedule, and where you can actually start the MenB vaccine slightly earlier than 3 months, at 2 months, and then have the second dose at 4 months, and that booster dose again at 12 months. And that's just we recognise that it's important to get this vaccine on board as early as we can to provide protection. But also for some, trying to fit in an extra visit is not something that is possible. So there's those two options available.
Okay, that's great. And looking at, so there's no other changes with the normal schedule for our tamariki? Like, the schedule is the same as it always has been?
There's been a little bit happening in the last I guess I'd probably say 6 months. One of them's a vaccine change. So we changed from the pneumococcal 10 vaccine to the pneumococcal 13. So that's a vaccine given at 6 weeks, 5 months, and the booster dose at 12 months. That happened late last year. And then, other exciting stuff actually starting from Saturday on the 1st of April with the rollout of the flu program. This year, flu is funded for tamariki aged 6 months to 12 years. And, that's a fantastic initiative in terms of trying to prevent, the influenza infection and keep our tamariki well over winter. So,
Yeah, great. And so families can just go to their GP or their normal vaccinator to get the influenza vaccine?
Yes. So, and potentially for the older children, 3 years to 12 years, being able to access it through pharmacy as well as an option. Not all
Great.
pharmacies will offer it, but some definitely are. So that's great in terms of having another provider available.
Yes.
Your immunisation, your routine schedule, generally you access it through your primary healthcare provider, your general practice, your Māori and iwi clinic, or your Pacific health provider, depending on who you're enrolled with or who you routinely see.
Yeah. No, that's great. And like really important, and I think sort of this is a very appropriate time to be talking about the importance of getting those immunisations on time and keeping up with the schedule and getting them on time, isn't it? Like the timeliness of them is,
Yeah, people potentially will have seen the news recently of 2 deaths from pertussis, so whooping cough. And I think it is, it's a really timely opportunity to remind us that on-time immunisation is the best protection, and that there's always the opportunity to catch up as well if you have got behind in the schedule. So alongside that, and if I can just do a little plug here for pregnancy immunisation.
Absolutely. Adult immunisations are just as important, aren't they, than, it's what they are for our tamariki, because at the end of the day, it's the adults that are around and interacting with our children, and they're the ones that need to really be protected as well.
Yeah, I think that is very true sentiment. There is a schedule that crosses the lifespan, and it's important that we all have the best protection on board. But particularly, I think pregnant women play a key role in protecting themselves and also protecting their infant before they can start their own vaccinations. And this is particularly important with pertussis or whooping cough. So from the second trimester on, in every pregnancy, it is recommended that hapu mama do have a Tdap vaccine, so that's diphtheria, tetanus, and whooping cough. And the idea behind that is that mum has the vaccine, mum responds to the vaccines and makes antibodies and gives those antibodies across the placenta to the baby, which gives baby protection when they are, once they are born, and gives them that protection before they can have their own immunisations, before they can start building their own immunity. So really, really important thing for mum to do. The other one too for hapu mama is the influenza vaccine. So we know influenza disease can be very severe in pregnant women. So we really want women to make sure that they are protected when they're pregnant. And that can be given at any stage during pregnancy. It also does mean that mum passes over some antibodies to help protect baby in those first few months of life as well, before they can have their flu vaccine at 6 months.
Yes. Yeah, really important. And I know when my daughter was pregnant, we all went in and got our pertussis whooping cough vaccine as well, because we were going to be close with the baby and having lots of close contact, just so that everyone around her in that immediate circle was protected to build and strengthen, that protection for her in those early, days and weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, it is really important to think about what can I do to help protect baby. The most important thing is that vaccine in pregnancy for the pregnant woman. But it's a bit like us health professionals who have a lot of interaction with little babies. It's important that we're protected as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that we're not passing it on.
Yeah. No, good. So we've got a question here that's come in that says, what happens if your kids aren't vaccinated? Well, I guess I'll let you answer that one, Bernadette.
I guess this question sort of has two sides to it. The first one is immunisation and vaccination is a choice in New Zealand, and whether or not you choose to vaccinate your children or you decide to delay it, or that is your choice, and it should be an informed choice that you make based on good information and making sure that you're checking out reputable information. And I'd encourage you to have a conversation with your Plunket nurse, with your primary healthcare provider around that. What it will potentially mean, though, that if there's an outbreak, so like we keep talking about measles, and you hear a bit in the media. We had a case of measles in New Zealand imported in earlier this year, and we were all sort of a bit on tenterhooks thinking, oh, is it going to take off? Which thankfully it didn't. But if something like a measles outbreak happens, when children aren't vaccinated, they may be excluded from school or from childcare centre. So that's something to consider. The other side to that is thinking about if you want to start later, having a conversation around what you can do to protect your child, obviously keeping people who are unwell away from the household. All the things like washing our hands, covering coughs and sneezes and things are really important as well. But I'd certainly encourage anyone who's unsure, wanting to discuss it, to make contact with, Plunket line or your primary healthcare provider to discuss it through. The only time for children in particular that you're asked for evidence around immunisation is access to early childcare or to school, and it's just about providing a certificate. Now that certificate can say fully vaccinated, partly vaccinated, not vaccinated. It's not about exclusion. It's around being aware of who are those kids, if there is an outbreak, who the local medical officer of health may need to be in contact about them staying at home.
Yeah, great. And that certificate can be, again, given out from their primary provider.
Primary healthcare.
So, primary healthcare provider. Yep. No, that's good. Yeah. Okay. And I guess, the other other vaccines for adults as well is actually, still really important, just why we've sort of been talking about adults, so keeping up to date with your tetanus, and particularly if you think about the areas where we've had lots of flooding and the civil defence emergencies recently, really important for, adults there who are helping with the cleanup process, or children who are out, in the dirt and the contamination, and, helping with the cleanup, if they've got open cuts or they get cut. Really important to, go and get their booster for tetanus, and
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing is, and I probably slip into that as well, as we often think about that, these diseases are, passed on person to person, but they're actually not all done that way. And tetanus is a classic where it is, it's in the soil, you get a wound, it gets contaminated, and that becomes your risk. And so, that is something that, a lot of people are worried or concerned about, and adults should be checking if they're up to date with their immunisations. I guess, again, it's one of those things to have a conversation with the practice or the provider that you're enrolled with.
Yeah. And if you do get a cut,
no, you make sure it's cleaned. I was going to go to a different topic, so we'll finish with tetanus first, shall we?
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say, make sure it's clean. But if you're not sure of your immunisation status, go to a medical centre and find out. They will always give you a booster, just to cover you and to make sure it's better to get that booster than to not have anything at all, and then, end up with a horrible illness.
Yeah. Yes. And it's just while we were talking about adult vaccines, just going to do a bit of a plug around, making sure that we're all up to date for our measles, mumps and rubella, that we have got our protection on board, particularly around measles. It's not that far back in our memory, the 2019 2019, yes, 2019 measles outbreak across New Zealand. So really important that we as adults check that we are up to date, and actually for those under the age of 30.
And again, having that conversation with your general practice to work out what your immunisation status is. What's the protocol for catching up Men's B for Pippi for 6 months but younger than 12 months?
Okay. So back to the important topic, Men B vaccine. That's what we're here for today. So while it's been put on the routine schedule, so the 3-month, 5-month and the alternative schedule, there is a program around catching up all children under the age of 5 actually, and that will get into full momentum over the next few months, probably largely taking off from May. But for those children who are over 6 months but younger than 12 months, it'll be the 2 doses and then followed by a booster dose. So it's 8 weeks between those 2 doses and then a booster dose usually, at 12 months or at an appropriate interval after 12 months.
Nice. Oh, good. Side effects, what are the sort of side effects? Obviously a fever with the Men's B. Any other sort of side effects that we can expect?
So fever, tender injection sites. So the things we normally expect to see with vaccination, so a bit of tenderness, redness, pain at that injection site. So your usual things, cool flannels, taking off clothing, and frequent feeds are all those things that usually help our pēpi and our tamariki following immunisation. The slightly older kids may have a reluctance to use their limb that they've had the vaccine in. So generally, once they're over the age of about 12 months, we'll consider using the deltoid site, just because it's more inconvenient if they're not that keen on walking, especially when they're toddling around. They look so cute, don't they? But it's generally short-lived. But it's and I mean we all know that too. It's like I'm thinking about I'll get my flu vaccine next week and it's going to be a little bit sore at the injection site, and I won't.
Okay, no, that's good. All right, and there's some really good information around vaccines. Te Whatu Ora have put out. They've got a new website, haven't they, around immunisations?
Yes, they do. It's looking lovely. It's a great, so Te Whatu Ora updated a new website specifically aiming that immunisation information at parents and caregivers and whānau. So, it's well worth a check out.
A great website to go to, And always, Plunkett or your well child provider will have information around immunisations, vaccines, what to expect with reactions and how to manage those reactions, post-immunisations. Plunkett lines there, 0800 933 922, 24/7. So again, if you've got a little one who's unsettled, give us a ring and we can help give you some tips and tricks to try and distract them and keep them happy.
Yes.
No, that's good.
I see we've got a question around how long has the Men B vaccine tested, how long's it been used for? And I think that's a really good question. So most vaccines go through quite a long testing process, usually somewhere between 5 and 10 years. The Men B vaccine, actually, while it's new to our childhood immunisation schedule, it's not new to New Zealand. We've actually been using it here funded for special groups, so people who are at higher risk, since 2021. And it was first used in New Zealand in 2018. So it was available for private purchase. And internationally, it's actually been used since 2012. So you could, we're 11 years down the track of it being available available for use. We're certainly, we continue, the UK rolled out the vaccine well, it was definitely prior to COVID. So I want to say somewhere like 2016, 2018.
Right.
Yeah, so they've been using the vaccine for a little while now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there'll be lots of information on it and study on it, and
Yeah. And which is where that information around the recommendation for using the prophylaxis paracetamol to manage fever and the consequences of fever. So, we've had that opportunity to learn from other countries and how they've rolled out the program. So,
yeah.
I
Great.
think the other thing to say too for parents, like immunisation's a choice, there is that choice around the paracetamol. It is a recommendation that it's given, but if parents don't have access to it and they still want to have the immunisation, then that's something that can be done as well. It's about having an informed discussion with your primary healthcare provider or the vaccinator around that. But we would recommend paracetamol, but acknowledge that it might not happen in all circumstances.
Yeah. Just that, just thinking along that lines around the paracetamol, Bernadette, the group of children that are in the, the Pippi study where they don't use paracetamol, some of them are on ibuprofen, that is still exactly the same to use.
They would use the ibuprofen if that's the arm that they are in of the Pippi study, yes. Yep. So they'd use the antipyretic that they're recommended to have. And just to say, perfect. I don't think I mentioned it before, the recommendation around paracetamol is for the under 2s.
Right.
So it's not across the board. It's not for the whole under 5 group. It is, the recommendation is there for those under 2s in particular.
Okay.
Just to also just add, because I know some people have young tamariki and they have older tamariki or rangatahi who are off to, whether it's boarding school or university halls of residence, they're also now eligible for the MenB vaccine alongside the meningococcal ACY&W vaccine. So really important for them to have that protection too in terms of close living circumstances in those university halls of residence or boarding schools.
Yeah. So if there's, parents out there, families out there who aren't sure about whether to go ahead and get the vaccines and that, who can they talk to? Where can they go to get that reassurance or some more information on it?
I think probably the best thing to do is to have a chat with your primary healthcare provider, making that appointment if you're, I'm all good for the other immunisations, I'm just not sure about MenB, I want to have a bit more of a discussion, make that appointment for the immunisations and have that opportunity for that discussion with your, I'm going to call them your local vaccinator, but your primary healthcare nurse or your general practitioner, and just ask your questions and talk through what your concerns are. And it might it's really important that you feel comfortable with the choice that you make and you feel like you've made an informed decision on what is best for your tamariki and your whānau.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Is there any other sort of messages that you feel like we need to get out there to just help support whānau with making that decision around getting immunisations and the importance of getting the immunisations?
I guess there's probably a few things that, there's lots of things I'd love to touch on, but there's never, quite enough time for everything. But just thinking about, it is important to try and to do immunisations on time. And if you're having, potentially looking at booking for vaccines, once you've had one set done, booking in for the next ones, you can always change that appointment if it doesn't quite work out. But knowing when you're next going to go in, I think one of the things that parents and caregivers are often concerned about is like multiple injections and, what is that like in terms of if, my 12-month-old is going in and they're having 3 injections, what can I do to make them feel more comfortable or, keep me feeling calm so I can keep my child calm as well. And I think, it's making sure that you're feeling comfortable with how you're holding your child, talking to them, taking, calming deep breaths, and just, because they pick up how you're feeling. And if you're trying, just try and stay, I guess, centered and calm as possible. Distraction for older children is absolutely key. Whether that's bubbles, a little bit of extra screen time, maybe the idea of, they're getting a treat and afterwards, or just, whether that's, that treat is an opportunity to go and play at the playground. But give them something to look forward to. So, and I mean, I'm a little bit old-fashioned, so I'm still a big fan of blowing bubbles. Not that we need to be blowing bubbles these days, but
bubbles are great.
Wave them around.
What child doesn't love bubbles? And as you say, the treats don't have to be anything that costs a lot of money. It can be stopping at the local playground to play afterwards, or going to the beach and going and having a play on the beach, or it can be all sorts of things. It's about how you sell it, isn't it? If you sell something exciting enough, then you can get them on board.
That's great. So I guess it's the my main messages are: do have a discussion, make an informed choice that's best for you, best for your tamariki, best for your whānau. And it is really important to look at those pregnancy vaccinations to ensure that pēpi are vaccinated on time. And as an adult, check out what you might be missing in terms of your immunisation coverage. So,
Great. Oh, look, thank you so much, Bernadette, for giving your time to us today. It's been great as always. Whānau, if you have any questions that you would like to ask either myself or Bernadette, please send them in to us, because, they'll be forwarded on and we can answer them for you. But it's been lovely having this chat with you again, Bernadette. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me back, and stay well, everyone. Sadly, winter's coming.
Yes.
It's very cold here in Wellington today.
It sure is. All right, thank you. Ka kite, everybody.
Ka kite.
Bye-bye.